Hi, welcome to our lecture. We're going to be looking at the art of China and Korea in this segment. We're going to start off by looking at Chinese art. Although Chinese culture seems monolithic to those in the West, China has the size and population of Europe with the same ethnic diversity and the same number of languages. To speak in general terms of Chinese art, therefore, has the same validity as speaking in general terms about European art. To make such a diverse subject more manageable, Chinese art is divided into historical periods named after the families who ruled China for vast stretches of time. These families, united by blood and traditions, formed dynasties, and their impact on Chinese culture has been enormous. Imperial Chinese history is marked by the rise and fall of many dynasties and occasional periods of disunity, but overall the age was remarkably stable and marked by a sophisticated governing system that included the concept um, of meritocracy. Um, each dynasty had its own distinct characteristics, and in many eras encountered encounters with foreign culture and political influences through territorial expansion and waves of immigration also brought new stimulus to China. China had a highly literate society that greatly valued poetry and brush-written calligraphy, which, along with painting, were called the three perfections, reflecting the esteemed position of the arts in Chinese life. Imperial China produced many technological advancements that have enriched the world, including paper and porcelain. Calligraphy was so important that even emperors were known to have been accomplished calligraphers, painters, and poets. Um, Artists worked under the patronage of religion or state, although counterculture was developed by a group called the literati who painted for themselves, eschewing public commissions and personal fame. These artists produced paintings of a highly individualized nature, not caring what the world at large would think. Um, and literati is spelled Literati. China and Korea both center around three main religions: Confucianism, Daoism or Taoism, and Buddhism. Confucianism is a way of life taught by Confucius, King Fuzi in China in the 6th and 5th century BCE, and the rituals and traditions associated with him, sometimes viewed as a philosophy, sometimes as a religion. Confucianism is perhaps best understood as an all-encompassing humanism that is compatible with other forms of religion. Confucianism has deeply influenced spiritual and political life in China. Its influences have extended to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. East Asians may profess themselves to be Shintoist, Taoist, Buddhists, Muslims, or Christians, but seldom do they cease to be Confucians. Confucianism concerns itself primarily with ethical principles and does not address many traditional religious beliefs. These are generally provided by Chinese religions, Taoism, Buddhism, or other religions which Confucians follow. However, Confucius regarded heaven as a positive and personal force in the universe. He was not, as some have supposed, an agnostic or skeptic. He also taught a highly optimistic view of human nature and man's potential. Daoism, also spelled Taoism, is a religious philosophical tradition of Chinese origin which emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, literally, which translates to way. Um, the Tao is a fundamental idea in most Chinese philosophical schools. In Taoism, however, it denotes the principle that both the source, pattern, and substance of everything that exists. Taoism differs from Confucianism by not emphasizing rigid rituals and social order. Taoist ethics vary depending on the particular school. but in general tend to emphasize wu-wei or effortless action, naturalness, simplicity, spontaneity, and the three treasures, compassion, frugality, and humility. I'm not going to discuss Buddhism too much because you've already learned all I think you need to know about Buddhism in our last segment related to South Indian and Southeast Asian art. So we're going to be looking at some Chinese sculpture first. China is a monumental civilization that has produced large-scale sculpture as a sign of grandeur. Enormous scale without sacrificing artistic integrity is a typical Chinese characteristic, and this is epitomized by the terracotta army that you see here. Um, of the Emperor of China, Queen Shuhong, and I know I'm mispronouncing that. Um, the Chinese have created a dazzling number of sculptures cut from rock in suti, I-N-S-I-T-U, a technique probably imported from India. At the same time, Chinese sculpture is known for its intricately designed miniature objects. So, in addition to um, this large scale sculpture. Um, and usually these are made of jade or are especially prized for their beauty, and they are durable and polished to a high shine in a matte sort of green gray color. So the first emperor, Qin Shi Huan, I think that's how you say it, conquered much in his life, but his driving purpose was even greater. He sought to conquer death. In order to achieve immortality, he built himself a tomb, a vast underground city guarded by life-size terracotta army, including warriors, infantrymen, horses, chariots, and all their attendants, armor, and weaponry. How does this tomb differ from others that we've seen? The first emperor's army and burial complex was part of a grand scheme to recreate the entire world of the court below ground. The pits containing the soldiers also included charioteers and stables. The emperor's tomb itself, yet to be unearthed, is supposed to contain a working model of the entire palace compound, set with traps to ward off looters. The first emperor was obsessed with immortality during his reign, so his burial complex was provisioned with all that was important to him on his journey to the next world. So very similar to this Egyptian outlook on the afterlife. Obviously, his army was extremely important as it was through military conquest that he built his empire. The burial complex also signaled a direction toward the use of ceramic models as stand-ins for sacrificial victims, a process that had begun early but reached gigantic proportions here. The use of ceramic models of soldier armies continued into the Han Dynasty. Tombs continued to be filled with objects representing real things, and the ability to prepare such a burial complex world in the Han Dynasty became the dream of an increasingly broader segment of society. The underground terracotta army found in the first emperor's burial complex is undoubtedly one of the most remarkable and mysterious discoveries from the ancient world. A sprawling citadel has been unearthed, complete with gardens, stables, bronzes, ritual vessels, jade jewelry, and a wealth of gold and silver ornaments. Besides revealing much about an ancient way of life, observing the physical construction of the underground complex and the methodical production of the figures reveals a set of themes from which we gain a window of insight to the first emperor's worldview and enduring influence. The first emperor was known for stunning innovations that consolidated his rule through modernization. During his reign, he introduced the standardization of currency, writing, measurements, and more. He connected cities and states with advanced systems of roads and canals. He is also credited with continuing the construction of the Great Wall which is perhaps the most widely known symbol still associated with China to this day. He is regarded as a military genius, and while his methods included massacre and destruction, some claim that his ultimate success at bringing the states together justifies the violence, a necessary cost of nation building. We also see the first assembly line style production and the creation of his terracotta warriors, horses, and chariots. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the burial complex is what it suggests about the young emperor's obsession with immortality. Driven to conquer death itself, the eventual first emperor ascended to the throne of the Yin state at age 13 and immediately began to plan his burial. Can you imagine being so young and already just thinking about that? And more importantly, his underground palace, a mausoleum um, attended by an army including over 7,000 terracotta warriors, horses, chariots, and weaponry intended to protect him in the afterlife. The first emperor envisioned a subterranean domain that would parallel his worldly existence after his corporeal death. According to the Han Dynasty historian Sima Ying Yan, the first emperor lined his burial complex with a treasury of riches and piles of precious gemstones, said to represent the stars, sun, and moon. He was deeply concerned with the universe and looked to the cosmos as a guide for crossing over to an immortal existence. Excavation also revealed other mysterious findings, like strangely high levels of mercury and evidence that the poisonous substance coursed through an intricate system of underground troughs, replicating the typography of the actual rivers and seas, carving the surrounding landscape. Some suggest that the emperor believed mercury had life giving power and so surrounded himself with the toxic element, believing it was yet another way he might live forever. Of all the accomplishments from this extraordinary period, the unification of China is without a question the greatest symbol of the Ying dynasty power and influence. Born in a time of turmoil in China's history, known as the Warrior States period, which took place from 475 to 221 BCE, the first emperor founded the short-lived Qing dynasty. I get confused on how to say these words. Yingxing dynasty. So it's spelled Qin. I apologize. By 221 BCE, he merged the seven warrior states into one nation and took the name Yingxi Shi Wan, which means the first emperor. He left a legacy of a centralized and bureaucratic state that would be carried on into successful dynasties over the next 2 millennia. Prior to his taking the throne, the Yin state had been in existence for over half a century. Under the single clan Ying, though never under the rule of one individual, the rulers of the state of Qing, and this is in your lecture notes, I'm so sorry. Ying is spelled Y-N-G, and then Qing is spelled Q-I-N. So they're two different. I know I'm pronouncing them like they sound the same, and I apologize. So the rulers of the state of Yin, spelled Qin, had gradually expanded their domain over the centuries, but the slow effort culminated in ultimate victory when the first emperor succeeded in uniting the once divided empire. And here you're looking at an armored kneeling archer. So this is just a more of a detailed view of some of the terracotta warriors found in the mausoleum. When the burial complex was first discovered by farmers in 1974, archaeologists set to work on one of the most astonishing ancient sites on record. The excavation uncovered a sprawling citadel with thousands of warriors, each designed with a unique face and clothing. In addition, the warriors themselves, the dig uncovered, in addition to the warriors themselves, the dig uncovered horses, chariots, bronze, ritual vessels, jade jewelry, and gold and silver ornaments. According to the historian Sima Yan, the emperor so feared that his artisans might disclose all the treasures that was in the tomb that after the burial and sealing that after the burial and sealing up of the treasures, the middle gate was shut and the outer gate closed to imprison all the artisan laborers so that no one came out. That's pretty harsh. The first emperor's burial complex is a spectacular find, but many questions remain unanswered. Why was the first emperor so obsessed with immortality and defense even in death? What do you suppose lies in his tomb, and why do you think the Chinese have not yet opened it? What effect did the creation of the first emperor's terracotta army have on burial customs after his dynasty? The story of the burial complex is also fascinating because it was conceived by such a very young individual. Court records reveal that despite taking the throne at the age of 13, and he took the throne in 264 BCE, the eventual emperor ordered construction to begin almost immediately. Enormous numbers of laborers worked on the project, which was halted as the dynasty neared collapse. To date, 4 pits have been partially excavated. 3 contain terracotta soldiers, horse-drawn chariots, and weapons. The 4th pit was found empty, a testament to the original unfinished construction. One of the most extraordinary features of the terracotta warriors is that each appears to have distinct features, an incredible feat of craftsmanship and production. Despite the custom construction of these figures, um, studies of their proportions reveal that their frames were created using an assembly production system that paved the way for advances in mass production and commerce. Archaeologists estimate that the objects, including figures, horses, and weapons, number in the thousands, though the true story may never be known. So again, some cross currents to think about. Egyptian culture, when we think about medieval times, probably the Hiberno-Saxon. So I'm going to end here for now. There will be a part 2, and so stay tuned.